Hello everyone, today we are diving into an important topic, basics of oxygen delivery. Let's take a case study. A nurse calls you with a patient feeling weak and dizzy, has some nausea and is getting more confused. His SpO2 is 100%, his vitals otherwise look okay. You notice that this is a 75-year-old with heart failure patient with pneumonia. His blood gas shows lactate of 6. Patient is transferred to the ICU, a central line is placed, and his SpO2 comes out to be around 40%. So the point I'm trying to make is, despite a patient having a SATs of 100%, these patients can have issues with oxygen delivery, and at tissue level, these guys may be hypoxemic. So let's understand the concept of oxygen delivery in more detail so that we can avoid situations like these. Any medical provider who is taking care of a patient who can turn very sick must know the concept of oxygen delivery and oxygen consumption. So this would be beneficial for those working in ER, ICU, or on the hospital floors. To understand oxygen delivery, you must understand the pumps, the pipes, and the carriers. So in the pipes, you have to know both macro and micro circulation. And for the carrier, you have to understand both RBCs and the hemoglobin. You can already see that there are so many factors that can control oxygen delivery to the tissues, but we'll talk about the broad principles first and then go into more details. Let's understand some basic definition of oxygen content, delivery, and consumption, and understand what oxygen extraction is. The oxygen content is the total amount of oxygen carried in the blood, and that would be amount carried by the hemoglobin and the one dissolved in the blood. The dissolved oxygen depends on your partial pressures multiplied by the factor of 0.003. The amount that is carried by the hemoglobin depends upon what is the amount of oxygen each hemoglobin molecule carry, which is around 1.34. What is the concentration of your hemoglobin and how much is it saturated. So total oxygen content is 1.34 multiplied by the hemoglobin level multiplied by the percent SATs and amount of dissolved oxygen. In a person with hemoglobin of 15, satting 100%, will have oxygen content of 20.4 ml oxygen per deciliter of blood. If we are measuring the content in arteries, we denote it by CaO₂, and if we are denoting in the veins, we write CVO2. Okay, oxygen delivery, on the other hand, is the amount of oxygen being delivered to the tissues. So it depends upon how much is the content of the blood and how much of the blood flow is through that tissue. And that is nothing but cardiac output. And to keep the units same, we'll use deciliters per minute for the cardiac output instead of liters per minute. Amount of oxygen delivered to the tissues will be your oxygen content multiplied by the cardiac output. And in a normal person with a cardiac output of 5 liters per minute or 50 deciliters per minute is around 1000 ml of oxygen. Let's understand what oxygen consumption is. This is the amount of oxygen that your body is consuming every minute to survive. To figure it out can be a little tricky, but the way we calculate it is by Fick's principle. So what we do is we calculate the amount of oxygen being delivered to the tissues and measure how much is coming back. And if you subtract your return from the delivery, you should be getting the amount that is consumed in the tissues. So VO2 is equal to how much was delivered minus how much was returned. And this would be equal to the arterial content multiplied by the cardiac output, that's your delivered, minus oxygen content of the venous side, that's your mixed venous, multiplied by the venous return. Since cardiac output is equal to venous return, we can simplify this equation to cardiac output multiplied by the arterial minus venous content of the blood. And when you solve it, we approximately get around 300 ml of oxygen per minute. And when you move the numbers around, you get your famous Fick's equation of cardiac output equals VO2 divided by oxygen content of artery minus oxygen content of veins. Take a moment on this page and try to understand this formula very well, because this is going to form the basis of most of your cardiac rotations. When you're at rest, basal metabolic rate ranges between 200 to 300 ml per minute. And you have to understand that this is a non-negotiable term. You have to maintain this for the survival of your patient. It can certainly vary with different condition, which will increase your metabolic rate. For example, activity, exercise, fevers, sepsis, seizures, etc. Next term is oxygen extraction ratio, which is the ratio of VO2 by DO2. That means how much you use by how much is supplied. And that would give to this equation your arterial content of oxygen minus venous content divided by the arterial content. Some physicians will simplify it to your arterial sats minus venous sats divided by the arterial sats. In this, you are assuming that the impact of dissolved oxygen is minimal. However, as your FiO2 increases or PO2 increases in the blood, this equation might not hold true. So the oxygen extraction ratio for a normal person would be 250 by 1020. These are the two numbers that we calculated before, which is around 25%. So your body supply is 4 times higher than what it needs. And the reason for this is because it acts as an instantaneous buffer for fluctuations in demand. For example, when you're exercising or running away from a danger, you need those demands immediately and not wait. The second reason is optimization of microvascular diffusion gradient. Because different cells have different distances and capillaries have different flow in the blood vessels, a high DO2 ensures that entire microvascular network remains highly saturated with oxygen and compensates appropriately for this heterogeneity. So let's look at the VO2-DO2 relationship curve. On this, we have got oxygen delivery on the x-axis and oxygen consumption on the y-axis. Normally the delivery is around 1000 and your VO2 is around 250. VO2 can be different from different person because VO2 is your metabolic rate. However, in a given small period of time, VO2 would be usually constant, but certainly it will change if you got new pathologies, new fevers, more vigorous activity, etc. And this is your tissue oxygenation curve. You have this large buffer zone in which your tissue oxygenation remains constant. However, once your supply drops down to a certain level called anaerobic threshold or critical DO2, you start getting into trouble and develop anaerobic metabolism and elevated lactate. Notice that anaerobic threshold is higher than the VO2, and this is because of the tissue heterogeneity. We'll discuss this feature as we go along. So as your supply decreases, most of the tissues will do well, but some of the tissues with high extraction ratio will start feeling the brunt of this, and your patient might be making some degree of lactic acid. Normally the liver would be there to consume most of the lactate so that your lab values look okay, but understand that your tissues are under stress. If your supply falls less than demand, you turn into anaerobic metabolism, which is highly inefficient. Your patient starts making lactic acid, which you can start seeing in the blood. Now, this is an important concept. Your whole body doesn't have one oxygen extraction ratio. Different organs have different oxygen extraction depending on the rate of metabolism. So, for example, your brain uses around 40% of the oxygen that is supplied to it, while your heart uses around 60%. Your kidneys are mostly filters and they receive around 25% of your cardiac output. So their oxygen extraction is very low, to the order of 10 to 20%. Now, these numbers can certainly change in different pathologies, but these are approximate numbers. When you measure the oxygen saturation in the superior vena cava, it comes to be around 70%, because the average of your brain and upper extremity comes down to around 30% extraction ratio, while the oxygen saturation in the inferior vena cava are slightly higher, to the order of 75%, because this is an average of total requirement in the lower part of the body. And since kidneys use quite a bit of cardiac output, they bring this number lower. So extraction is around 25% and return SATs is therefore higher at 75%. Since your heart uses around 60% of the oxygen delivered to it, the venous oxygen in the coronary vein is very low, to the order of 40%. This brings your mixed venous, which is measured in the pulmonary artery, to slightly lower than in the superior vena cava. Now, this number can be variable depending on different pathophysiological process, so you will see different number quoted in the literature. Even though mixed venous, that is your SVO2, is slightly different from central venous oxygen sats, which is your oxygen sat in your superior vena cava, these two numbers are highly correlated for a patient and is useful for trends. While SVO2 is more accurate number, they require floating a pulmonary artery catheter, which comes with its own complication. So you can mostly get by using a central venous line, and measuring SCVO2, which will give you approximately the same numbers. We'll discuss the risk and benefit of these two in some other lecture. So on average, oxygen extraction ratio of human body is around 25%. However, the higher extraction ratio in different tissues make them more compromised to decrease in blood supply. And kidneys are the best example for this. In kidneys, 90% of the renal blood flow goes to the cortex, which is mostly a filtrative function, so it doesn't use as much oxygen. So the oxygen extraction ratio of the cortex is only 10%, while medulla is highly metabolically active because that's where most of the energy intense processes are, like sodium reabsorption, potassium management, and other electrolytes. But because medulla only gets 10% of the blood flow and is highly metabolically active, the oxygen extraction ratio here is around 80%. That is why the renal failure is commonest presentation when perfusion fails, and most of the times it will affect your renal medulla. One of the other things to ponder is that critical DO2 or anaerobic threshold is not a fixed number. Different cells have different rate of metabolism and pathologies affects this differently. So for example, in this figure, you can see the critical DO2 in a healthy subject, which is different with different diseases. So processes like heart failure or anemia would increase your anaerobic threshold, and pathologies like organ failures will also make the anaerobic threshold higher. So your lactate production can start earlier than what would be expected in a normal person. This threshold depends upon the metabolic rate, tissue type, pathophysiology, and the temperature of the organ. So let's add another layer of complexity to what we discussed. The extraction ratio not only depend upon the metabolic rate, they also depend upon the amount of blood flow through the tissues, which depends upon their capillary length, capillary diameter, density, effect of plasma skimming, rheological properties of RBCs, and many more other factors. So there are regional differences in oxygen extraction ratio between different organs and different tissues, and even in the same tissues in different capillary beds. So some of these areas will become anaerobic much earlier. And this is why you see patchy areas of ischemia or infarcts in patients in which oxygen supply is compromised. As the oxygen delivery decreases, you will see more and more confluent areas resulting in total tissue necrosis. So let's summarize. First, arterial saturations are important, but they do not give a complete picture of oxygen delivery. You have to check SVO2 to figure that answer. Supply is 4 times higher than the demand, and your oxygen extraction ratio is therefore around 25%. At critical DO2 or anaerobic threshold, the anaerobic processes start and your lactate start rising. It's not a fixed number and depends upon the tissue metabolic rate and various other pathologies. Tissue beds differ in the oxygen extraction depending on their metabolic profile and microvasculature. So some organs are more prone to ischemia than others, and even within an organ, there are different tissues which will be more prone to ischemia than other areas. Hope this was helpful. In the next one, we'll put all this information into more of a clinical practice, so watch out for the next video. Thank you.